Welcome back to the Great Outdoors and Travel Podcast. I'm Eric, your host, and today I'm actually going to be talking about the Erie Canal and the trail system that we have along it here in New York State. Kind of a special place for me as I've grown up along it, and also took a recent bike trip, 247 miles along its banks. And I thought it'd be a cool idea for my first real podcast to share you one of my personal adventures. So I hope you enjoy it. If you're not familiar, the Erie Canal runs east to west from Buffalo to Albany, New York, and was actually completed almost 200 years ago. And it was designed to bring goods from the Atlantic to the Great Lakes region. It's kind of the United States' first super highway, and really the main reason why we had westward expansion throughout this area. So, kind of a neat system. And along its banks, there's a series of, they call them tow paths, or pathways along it. I wanted to take a bike trip, and what better way than to have a private path rail trail without having to worry about cars. As you know, it's a true safety hazard for us bicyclists to be riding on the shoulder of the road. So wanted to kind of do my first long distance couple nights bike ride, and felt that was one way to really enjoy it and not have to worry about what's going on around me. So I've kind of always been fascinated with traveling by bicycle. It's simple, it's good for you. Pack up what you have and hope for the best. I didn't dive right into it. I kind of did over the winter. I kind of did a few, every day I rode a little bit on a exercise bike, and I've ridden 20, 30, 40 miles in a day and thought that I was up for the challenge. Little did I know that 20, 30, 40 miles in a day, when you're pushing to do 80, 90, even 100 miles, is a little different ball game. But I was a quick learner when it came to that. So did a lot of research before I decided to jump out on a bike and learn about, stops along the way and places to get food and etc. So the canal, you go through a lot of small towns. You're not really by yourself too often. So I felt it was a good way to kind of cut my teeth, so to speak, in the overnight bicycle game, I guess. Another thing that I really wanted to do it without investing a lot of money. I know a lot of us kind of get wrapped up in gear and get caught on the web looking at Amazon and what's the best gear for this and what's the best gear for that. I've kind of always been outdoorsy, so had tents and backpacks and stuff like that. So just kind of threw together what I had, makeshift, got it together, and got it on my bike. A couple things, I want to make sure my bike was in good shape. And, with that said, I took what I had. I had actually a 20-year-old giant mountain bike, but worked out great for me. So it's not about the gear, it's about the adventure. So word to the wise, don't get wrapped up in it, just start. A couple things I did make sure that it was mechanically sound. I had, the basic essentials, first aid kit, extra spare tubes, a couple hand tools that I knew if I did break down, they're fairly simple to work on. So get myself back up and running. Originally, I was going to ride from my house, which is only about 6 miles from the canal, and ride to Albany. So west to east. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to take the train back. That way I didn't have to worry about someone picking me up or riding back or whatnot. I was kind of, pressed for time. I tried to do it over a long Memorial Day weekend. And so originally, like I said, I was going to ride west to east and ride home. So what I decided to do, which I'll tell you why it wasn't the best idea, is take the train to Albany and then ride home. Main reason I did that is I didn't have to worry about a schedule as much. I wasn't racing to catch that train. With Amtrak, there's only one train per day coming this way that allows to put your bike on it. So didn't want to miss that. So I figured I would go take the Amtrak train to Albany and ride home. Early on my trip, I realized why that was a bad idea. In New York State, we usually get the wind out of the west. So I was going to be riding against the wind and uphill. Graded, it's along the canal, so it's not like steep hills, but it's a gradual incline for about 5,000 feet of elevation gain, gain and loss, they say. So, yeah, that was my first first thing. Only on one day I really had to worry about a headwind. I had actually about a 20-mile-an-hour headwind, which if you've ever ridden into something like that, it really slows you down, especially with panniers on the bike. They're not super aerodynamic. That day I actually only averaged about 8 miles per hour. So if you do the math, I didn't get too far. But speaking of the train, when I took the train to Albany, if you've never traveled that way, I highly, highly recommend it. It's fairly inexpensive. I think with the train ticket and my bike, you had to pay a little extra for that. It was like $50. So I thought that was pretty reasonable. You have a lot more leg room than you would on a bus or an airplane. They have food carts, which is kind of nice. You can get up, stretch your legs, get something to eat. The train ride was about 8 hours, so not super bad, but very, very, very comfortable. So, and with the train, you kind of go through these back ways through these towns, parts of the towns and areas that you normally wouldn't see. If got off the train there in Albany and decided to start my adventure. Early on, I started having a weird noise, and I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." I'm 5 miles into this, and I'm already breaking down. What it was is the rear rack that my panniers were on started sagging down and hitting my back tire. So if you are going to buy gear, don't cheap out on certain things like I did. So it wasn't a big deal. I was able to rig something up to prevent it from happening again. But when you're 4 or 5 miles into a 247-mile bike trip, not a fun way to start. So the train station's actually on the opposite side of the Hudson River. So soon after you start pedaling, you climb over the Hudson and you head north. So the nice thing about the Canal Trail is that it does follow right along the shores of the Hudson, the Mohawk, and the actual Erie Canal. So beautiful, beautiful ride. Like, as I mentioned earlier on, you don't have to worry about cars or traffic as you're riding on a path, so to speak. That part of the region is paved, so it's like riding in the street, but no cars, nothing to bug you. Lots and lots of people on that trail, depending on the time of year, obviously. But this was Memorial Day weekend, so tons of people on the trail, but plenty of room, so you can, everybody's super friendly. If you do have a mechanical breakdown, chances are you won't be by yourself for too long, and people are very nice and generally willing to help. So the weather was good on the first day. It was a little overcast, not super hot, so it made it nice for riding and kind of breaking in my trail leg, so to speak. The first day I rode only about 35 miles because I had to get obviously to Albany, so that was kind of a long trip, and then start riding. So first night just stopped in Schenectady, which is a town just north of Albany. Nice thing about riding and burning I don't know, what was it, 10,000 calories a day. You can eat whatever the heck you want. You don't have to worry about it. So that's the nice thing about those type of trips. So I found this old school Italian restaurant. I was like, okay, lots of carbs, and I was craving lasagna. So biggest piece of lasagna I've ever had. It was probably like 3-4 pounds. Seemed like, anyways. Massive, massive, massive. So Schenectady, if you've never been there, it's kind of a dump. Sorry, folks, if you live in Schenectady, but wasn't too eye appealing. Tried to get out of town a little bit, set up my tent, and get a first night's sleep. So, speaking of that, my tent was a Walmart one-man tent. Once again, use what you had. So I think I paid $25 for the thing. Worked good, easy to set up, super light, and does the trick. Day 2, I knew I kind of had to make a little bit more miles, so that was probably the most enjoyable day because you're going through what they call the Mohawk Valley. So just beautiful, quiet. You're in and out of these small mountain ranges, beautiful scenery, and a lot less traffic. So I didn't have as many people as day 1, walking their dogs and stuff like that. So on the canal, there's a series of locks. There's like 57 of them. And what a lock does is it helps raise and lower barges because, the canal isn't necessarily flat. So to raise or lower, they pull in through these huge gates, kind of look like something from Jurassic Park, these monstrous gates. They pull into these locks, they pump in the water, boat rises, they open the other side of the gate, and you float away. Nice thing about those, if you're on the canal path, is they allow free camping at most of them. Not all, but most. Some of them have facilities, bathrooms, etc., potable water, but just a nice break. They're 7 to 10 miles apart, so you plenty of opportunity to stop. You don't have to really plan it out as much as some other trails. I took advantage of that, though. If I seen something cool, I kind of got off, took my time, watched some of the boats, and just kept riding. So, Little Falls, New York, kind of like going back in time, Norman Rockwell type view. So once again in the Mohawk Valley, just quiet, peaceful. Couldn't ask for anything more. The next day, oh boy, I did 98 miles. Should have went 2 more just so I can have that century mark, but did 98 miles on day 3. Now, day 3 was like 95 degrees and 90% humidity. Very, very, very warm day. But I'm still here to talk about it, so it wasn't too bad. To Syracuse, New York that day. So if you look at a map, kind of a hike. But, once again, just took my time, pedaled, stopped when I got tired, ate when I got hungry, enjoyed the moment. I did bring some music, so, it gets kind of repetitive on a bike, especially by yourself. But, you kind of get in a zone and your mind starts to go places and it goes by relatively quick, actually. So, kind of a funny story, though. In Syracuse, I planned on staying in a Green Lake State Park. I was just going to pull over and set up my tent illegally, but was going to do it anyways. So after 98 miles, dying of sweat, hot, I get off the bike, find this little barn, actually, just off the side. I'm like, oh, perfect. I'll slide behind there, pitch up my tent, cook my food. Nobody will know I'm there. Go to sleep. I got off the bike, and I think I was swarmed by about 4 million mosquitoes. Literally, like instantly off the bike, swarming. Couldn't even set the tent up. After that day in the heat, I was like, screw it. I'm getting a hotel. I need a shower. I haven't showered in 2 days. So 2 days, 100-degree weather, biking, Yeah, I was pretty stinky. So pull out the old trusty phone, look up on Google. Everybody loves Google. And I'm like, okay, where is the closest motel, no-tell? Just need a bed and a shower. So I found this Econo Lodge, and I'm like, it's Memorial Day weekend. I don't care if it's $300 for the one night. I'm getting it. So it was only 2-3 miles from where I was. Rode over there, go in. Guy's like $60. I was like, $60. I love you. And it was nothing fancy, but bed was comfortable. Shower was nice. Soap was soap. So $60. It was. I was willing to spend 300 at the Econo Lodge if I had to. So I probably don't have to say it, but I slept like a rock. So next day, woke up and continued my adventure. So I was in Syracuse. It's kind of neat. You go right down through downtown Syracuse, through some of the Central Square area, through the university. Pretty, but if you've ever been to Syracuse University, it's up on top of a hill. So guess what? You wake up in the morning, or I woke up in the morning, and I had to ride straight uphill for about an hour. That wasn't too fun, but good thing about going uphill, eventually you get that free ride downhill. So also in Syracuse, you have the New York State Fairgrounds. It brings you right through there. It was kind of neat. Nobody around, obviously, that time of year, but, growing up in this area, a lot of good memories there, too. So, and then just kept riding along, obviously. So you go through all these little towns. Oh, and this town called Jordan, they were having a Memorial Day parade right as I'm coming through. So I was part of the parade for a few minutes, but that was day 4, so I knew I wanted to get home that night. I still had about 70 miles to go, and after the day before, it really took a toll on me, the heat. Drank lots of water, but there's only so much you can do. So on the 4th day, it was actually hotter. I think it hit 100 heat index. So, but beats rain, I guess, right? So kept riding and made it home. Nothing too eventful the 4th day, but was glad to get home. Never really got sore in the legs. At pretty good shape. After 247 miles, I thought I'd be a little more sore, but my ass, yep, that was hurting. Not much you could do about that. So I'm glad I did it, and I highly recommend the Erie Canal Trail. Like I said, no cars to worry about, relatively flat, mix of gravel, pavement. There is a little bit of road riding, but literally in 247 miles, I think 8 to 10 maybe on the road. So it wasn't too bad at all. So that's about it. This is my first real podcast that I'm recording, so bear with me. They will get better, I do promise. But I appreciate you listening. Once again, this is the Great Outdoors and Travel Podcast, and I'm your host, Eric. My goal with this is to post every other week to start, till I can get the hang of editing and get some guests. So I have a few ideas. I have actually a hot air balloon company owner that I'm going to bring on, kind of something neat. A triathlon, a world-renowned triathlete. That'll be kind of cool to talk to him. Just little by little. So if you have any ideas, send me a message, anything you'd like to hear about. This podcast is going to be pretty much anything about outdoors. So some traveling, some industry experts, some of my own personal adventures and stories, stories from, classic tales from Ernest Shackleton, if you know who he is, and some people that traversed Everest for the first time. So I'm excited about this new journey, and I'm glad you're coming along with me. So thanks for listening.